Okay, so now that we're done with the logistics, we can get to the good part. And I want to just say to everyone, thank you for taking your time joining us today and sharing in the experience. My name is Melinda, and I'm a West Contra Costa graduate. I'm also a UC Berkeley graduate. Go Bears. I'm a civil engineer now, and I'm going to be facilitating today's session. So for all of the panelists, in 30 seconds or less, if you could all tell us your name and what brings you to this panel. We will start with Goldie.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Goldie Williams. I am a parent. My daughter's on this panel, so I'm here for that first. I'm also, I have a program called Got Goals, and in the district and in our area, I do a lot of work. I consider myself a community educator. I'm here because this is vitally important to me.
Hi, my name is Edith Jordan McCormick, and I'm the principal of what we're now calling the Vista family of schools. That's Vista High School and the Vista K-12 Virtual Academy, as well as something called Secondary Home Instruction. And I'm here because, boy, getting through college, I'm an old school girl from LA, and I put myself through school from the beginning to that master's degree at UC Berkeley. Go Bears. And I'm 100% advocate for Black children. And really getting information out there and reminding people that it doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning, that we always learn from our mistakes and that failure is just a circumstance. So that's what I'm here for.
William.
All right, yeah, I was waiting on you to call me my name. I'm just
sorry.
I'm just messing with you. No, I was trying to get off of mute. So good evening or hello, everyone. My name is William McGee. I am the director of the Office of African American Student Achievement. This is my second school year in this role. And what brings me into this work is that I see myself in a lot of our students, and I really want us to have the opportunity to provide a world-class education for our children, treat our employees with respect, and treat our families with the dignity they deserve.
Good early evening, everyone. My name is Kiana Hatcher, and I'm currently the Associate Director of UC Berkeley TRIO program, specifically Educational Talent Search. So I run programs both in West County and Oakland School District, and I work with 6th through 12th graders in preparing them for higher education. I consider myself a champion of students, and so that just means that I work really hard to get low-income, first-generation students that look like me into top-tier universities or into careers of their choice. So that's what brings me here today. I live and breathe college access, and so I'm excited to share with you all today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Azriel Jones, and I'm currently a first-year student at Sacramento State, and my major is criminal justice. I'm here just to give you guys some insight about how to get to college, and yeah.
Thank you. Casey?
Hi, I am Casey Robinson. I am the principal of Summit K2 Middle School. I am a Cal alum, and similar to what I think it was Edith said, I am from LA and all about getting Black kids to college. So that is why I am here. And I just really love the fairs, and I've participated in a few. And so far, so good. I'm just always glad to be included.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aisha Tripp. I'm a writer and educator. I work currently now as a college coach for the Making Waves Foundation CAP program. So I work with a cohort about like 65 students who attend colleges throughout the US and just helping them navigate that college journey. I'm here today because I'm a big believer in the power of support systems and, providing students that that truth that they matter, that they have power and they have worth. And also I'm a big believer in providing students the opportunities to go above and beyond what's presented to them. So big advocate of like traveling, go abroad, go to grad school, do all those great things. So definitely here to offer like that support.
Thanks everyone for the introductions. All right, so our first question is, what are the core elements of a best fit college that feel most important to consider? So I'm going to start with Kiana, if you want to answer that.
Absolutely. I think that when I talk to students in particular about best fit colleges, I think about things that people don't necessarily think about, like weather is really important. I'm also from LA. I grew up in Inglewood. And so coming to Cal from LA is like a whole nother state. And I was like, I don't even wear puff coats, in LA. I don't wear jackets. I don't have to bundle up. And so I think like for me, weather is really important. And I also think about a connection to someone or something to the school and the type of experience that you would have. I had my heart set on Spelman or Howard or even UCLA was like my top choices, but I came to Berkeley because of the feel that I got for the institution, not necessarily because of the academics and the rigor. I literally came to visit and was like, this is where I belong because of the people that I got to experience. And so I think for me, it's about a feel, it's about experience and weather. Like that played a huge part.
Azriel, I'm curious what your thought is on this question since you are currently a college student.
For me, Sac State has always been somewhere where I wanted to go just because it's close to home, but not too close. And like Kiana said, weather is a really big thing to think about. Also, if you can visit the campus, I know because of the pandemic, it's kind of hard right now, but if you can visit the campus while it's in action, so you can get a feel of what it's like on campus. And even like for me, if I was able to, I wasn't able to, but if I was able to, I definitely would have got a feel for the dining hall just so that I can see, what the food is like because you're going to be eating there every day. So it's something, to get into.
Nice. Okay. Let's see. Casey, I see a lot of head nods. So.
Yeah, I think so far everything is right on. And when I started college, I didn't even know what right fit college meant. And so I'm really glad that now we have that language and that students are using that language and schools are using that language. And so I think in order to find the right fit college, I would just encourage so many students, and I see our probably some parents on the panel, to get an understanding of what's actually important to you. And don't think about maybe what you think your end career would be, but just like what makes you comfortable right now. And what are some things that you're willing to stretch yourself and get comfortable with, because I think about the number of students who started off freshman year with me who did not make it to senior year. And I think some of that was because they were being pushed farther outside of their comfort zone than what either they were willing to do, and that support system wasn't there to catch them. And so I would say in the right fit college, it would be also just finding out like who you are and having enough people invest in you so that you feel comfortable saying, this is good for me.
All right. Thank you for that. Does anybody else have anything they want to chime in on this? I want to make sure I get everyone's perspective.
I could chime in because I totally agree with what Casey was saying around like having an idea about like what you need and what your likes are, your interests, because the more you have a better understanding of yourself in that moment, the better you know what feels right for you. Like in terms of, are you the type of student that knows you thrive better in a setting that's more small and intimate? Or do you like the idea of being at a Big Ten campus where it's a lot of people and it's big populated? Do you know you're very social? Do you want to join like a fraternity or sorority? And it's not about knowing everything off the top, because obviously we're always changing and growing, but it is good to have a good understanding of like your likes and interests and exploring all of that.
Thank you for that. Goldie, you have your hand up.
One thing we did with Azriel, she went on a lot of college tours, so it allowed her to get an idea of what she was looking for. And even though I had my thoughts, I really, as a parent, stepped back because I wasn't going to be there. I needed her to be able to pick what was going to work for her. I was really letting her, I came in when she needed me to, but I listened. When she went on tours, I listened to what she loved at each campus and what she didn't like. So in my head, I knew kind of like what she would be looking for in a school. I think that your community and the culture are hugely important for African-American Black students, because it's hard to be in, even at Sacramento State, she's not encountering a whole bunch of African-American or Black professors, but she's in a dorm that's filled with African-American and Black students. So she's still getting that feel, and it gives her that community, and it gives her a sense of belonging. So she may not go to class and see herself, but she sees herself around her. I was also going to say about the extracurriculars, figure out if there's something there that you like, because in those moments where you just can't stand school and it's going to happen, it's those extracurriculars that may push you along. And then I think also for some kids, the career and the major part is important. For Azriel, she wants to be a lawyer and she's a criminal justice major, but Sac State had this phenomenal program. So it made sense for her to try to get there. And then last, I would say, trust trust the change. Change is going to happen, and it may not go exactly as you planned, but trust the change in the process. But also, even though you have preferences, be open to it. It may not go exactly how you wanted it, but just know that if you're going for higher education, find the fit for you, even if it's not the perfect fit.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say what's up to Azriel, because she's one of our WCC alumni and she participated in Black Grad too. So that's cool to see her living this college life. I know for me personally as a student, what prevented me from going away to a 4-year college was something as silly as I did not want to share a bathroom with a whole room of floor of people. And so that's part of what you have to do. Like Azriel mentioned, like looking at the food area, that's a big thing, right? But scoping it out. But then the other thing is about the program, what you think you want to explore when you get out, when you finish, what type of job, but then also seeing what options they have at that college to have you grow as a student, because sometimes we think we want to do something and then a college can have you in a whole nother place, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing, but really just learning what is the school about.
Thank you, William. That actually leads really well into our next question. I know there's a lot of talk about community. My next question is, how should students balance a school's academic programming and the campus community and city environment if they are in conflict?
Sure. I always think back to what my dad told me before I went to college. He was like, you can do everything, just not all at once. So I think it's important to it is important to just emphasize to pace yourself, because obviously when you're coming into a new setting, right, it's like, okay, you have your academics, you have your social activities. There may be a football game going on. There may be a sorority party going over here, or some friends invite you to the dining hall over there. So there's always going to be a lot of different things going on, but just pace yourself and also know your priorities. So also too, each semester is going to change. And so when each semester changes, there's going to be different priorities. And so even when I look back on my college experience, I definitely came in knowing that, like, I wanted to study abroad. I wanted to join clubs. I wanted to get involved. But I couldn't do that all in the first semester. I had to know my priorities and I had to pace myself and I had to readjust going along. And even when I talk to students now, they mention a lot about, what do they call it? The FOMO, the fear of missing out. And there's another one I thought of too called FOLD, called fear of letting down, right? So there's always like this fear of like, you're going to miss out, or this fear of like letting others down, but it's okay. Like I always tell students, pace yourself, know your priorities. And that way, that's how you can know how to balance between, okay, you know what, I need to do this first, let it be, get my work done, and then I can go and be social, and then I can go and do this. Just know your priorities and pace yourself.
Very good advice. Edith, I'll ask you the same question.
Yay, I wanted to answer this one. One of the things I learned, and I, like Will, I didn't go right out to a 4-year because I tell people I'm a proud product of LA Unified, I can read, but we didn't get help, so by the time I figured out what to do, I ended up transferring to a 4-year. But I think one of the things that we need to start teaching our kids is that conflict is healthy. There is always going to be some aspects of conflict in your life. And what changes conflict is what we do next. So you're always going to be having something going on, but it depends on if you are able to pick your lip up and keep it stepping. I remember just times, on a Monday, not knowing where I was going to get money for dinner, and it worked out on that Tuesday. And I think if anything, when it comes to conflict and being in conflict with something, we have to teach our children not to be problem admirers. And a lot of us, we're into that amen to the choir thing. And so you kind of, it's very advantageous when you want to feel a certain way about something to bring people around you that agree with that negative talk or whatever it is. But we really need to start programming ourselves to realize that, one, no one promised anybody a perfect world. You're going to have problems. And two, when conflicts arise, you're very much in control of how you're going to feel about the conflict by what your next steps are. So that would be my answer to that question. I was about to start preaching, but I had to roll me back in.
Thank you for that. Goldie, for you as a parent, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this question.
What I would say is, I would have a standard answer, but my answer is absolutely course corrected because of pandemic.
Mm.
And what do I mean by that? As a parent, I'm also the cheer coach at El Cerrito. So I deal with a lot of our youth, and I've been dealing with the pandemic with my seniors for 3 years. And this is just an unprecedented time, right? Typically, I would go in, listen, what are your goals going to be? I want her to say 4.0, 3.5. That's what I want her to go in hard. We're going to hit them. You know, there's all these thoughts of what the goals are. What I did was I rode the wave. So I'm checking in as she studies going, how are your grades? As we're checking in, she's on a semester system. So as we get to about halfway, how are things going? She shares her community with me. Her community all call me mom, and you know, they come over here and I've seen them out there. And there's times where for me, it felt a little heavy on the community side, a little heavy on different things, but I had to step back and frame it with pandemic. So my key was to keep her engaged and wanting to keep moving forward. So there's times where I would have conversations to say, how are things going? And then we would check it. Now we ended the semester. She's in good academic standing. She made it. So now this semester, we had a different conversation. And that conversation was, you got in, you got your foot wet, you made it through. So now let's talk about, you want to be a lawyer and your grades now do affect what's going to happen later. I'm not going to over pressurize her, but I do want to be realistic. So I think a healthy balance is good. And sometimes even some of her friends, let's keep it real. The kids that I'm dealing with had people that died from COVID, people that got shot. They've dealt with murders. And I'm talking about her direct friends. They've dealt with so much that even with them, as I'm talking to them, I'm cognizant of what are they dealing with, and how can we? And the thing is, like, one of y'all said it. I think it was you, Edith. You said it may, like, how do I say this? The path may be different than what you expected, and it's never over. So there's some kids that were on the verge of, like a lot of kids, this not just at this school, because I'm still in touch with all the kids I deal with, right? Kids have been in jeopardy of academic probation because of pandemic. Some of it, for me, I'm like, are they not applying themselves? Are they partying too much? What's going on? What I'll say is, as a parent, stay engaged. And what I mean by that is, I don't talk all the time, I observe. And I let her talk. And then a lot of times I'll try to ask questions to get her somewhere. But I think it's a healthy balance of supporting, having some structure, and honestly, at times realizing it's the pandemic and we want these babies here and we want their mental health okay. And then absolutely engaged where they can't be in school.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about the pandemic. It's obviously changed everything, and the college experience is not what it was, prior to this. I'm curious, Kiana, I know that you were doing a program at Berkeley. How is, like, with these 3 layers of academic programming, campus community, city environment, how has that, I guess, campus community piece of it changed really, because you don't really have that with the pandemic? How has that changed what's going on in your program?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if I still have a program, because I think a lot of times we err on the side of sharing our own personal experiences from college, right? Like, we do a lot of anecdote sharing. And so for me, I'm like, I went to Cal and I got to do all these amazing things, and I got to experience and travel, and these kids can't even live in the dorms, And so I think for me, it has really impacted the personal touch that we're able to share with our students, and like our own testimonies of what college did for us. And so I think even for students that I have as freshmen now, it's hard for me to advise them because their experience is so different. I'm like, are you connected with Cara Stanley in the Student Learning Center? And it's hard to connect with Cara because they're not physically in contact. And I think that physical connection is so important in Black communities in general, and being able to sit in a circle and have a conversation and to eat lunch together and eat dinner together. I think that is what really enriched my personal experience, is the community. And so because that has been severed by the pandemic, it's really hard for them to get that experience. And so kids are coming to me like, you said college was fun. For me, it was, and so I think like that's my struggle of like, now I have to consider, how do I sell college in a way that's like super meaningful when it's so different, and I think, that's a challenge, honestly, because kids are now like, well, I can just go get a job, And so as a program, we've had to restructure our conversations and talk about and highlight other aspects of college beyond the fun and the community, because that's not what they're really getting right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just a different perspective on how things have been previously. Does anyone else have any other thoughts they want to share on this topic, this question? If not, I'm gonna send this question to Azriel first. As a student, what factors should a student explore to determine if they will feel comfortable or included on a campus? Just want to know what that has been for you personally.
For me personally, I kind of came into this like blindly, and I just was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it culturally for me, but I'm just gonna have to figure it out. But for me being here, because I am on there's something called the Black Cultural Excellence floor in the dorm that I'm in, and so I am on that floor, and my RA is Black, and being able to connect with her, and being able to connect with her has connected me to all the other upperclassmen that are Black, and so it has helped me be able to get a feel of the campus. But I honestly feel like it's hard to, like right now it's hard with pandemic because you're not able to visit. Like you can look up online as much as you want, but it's really hard to like tell. So honestly, for kids who are like trying to figure out if this school is for you because of like culture vibes or anything like that, honestly, I would just say go for it. And if you don't like it, you can always, step back out of it, but like go for it and find out and try to find what you want,
I appreciate that. Casey, I'm gonna go to you.
Thank you. I was just typing in the chat just to support and +1 on Azriel's, the themed floors at dorms, especially in I forget that PWIs, or the predominantly white institutions, are really, really a saving grace. And so I would say for students who are looking at schools that are not HBCUs, to look into and see if they have other ways to be connected. It's just such an, oh my, I don't know what I would do without, if I didn't live on our theme program floor. Like I still have, those are some of the same friends that I have today. And so that is really, really essential. And I think even in a pandemic, I would imagine that a lot of colleges are doing virtual visits and virtual town halls and things like that. And I think that you will still get a feel for the college, the people, the way that they engage with one another, the way that they talk with one another, and that will inform whether or not that feels like how you want to talk to your friends. And it could be that they're quiet or they start off with music or whatever it is, but you do get a sense of people. And I would say attend as much like kind of college access stuff or things where they're reaching out into the community as possible to try and build up what you think about this school. Like I said before, I'm a first generation college student, so I didn't understand what any of this meant. I only visited a college because I had a friend who was like, yeah, we're going to go to the HBCUs. And I was like, okay, Mom, can I go? And they were like, sure. And that's how I went to go see Howard and Hampton. And I would not have gone if it not have been for them. I went to UC Berkeley. I had never been to the campus until I signed my paperwork saying like, yes, I'm going here. And so the only access that I had to UC Berkeley was they had a group that came down to LA, like downtown LA, and we went to, I don't even know what it was, but I remember it to this day. And I saw like other students and I was like, oh, okay. And there's like, okay, they went to Crenshaw, they went to Dorsey. I know those schools. Okay, I think I can do this. And it felt like I would be around people who I knew and were from the same area. So as when your college that you're in, any college that you're interested in, if they offer things in your local community, attend it.
All right. Goldie, you have your hand up.
Azriel, can you speak to, before you went online and you found all these different online communities and allowed you to kind of, yeah.
So nowadays with like, social media and stuff like that, there's Instagrams, even Facebook accounts that they have where it's kind of like, so for me, there was Sac State Students 2025, which is the year that I graduate. And then from that, there was a Black Sac State Students. So with that, it was helpful for students to be able to get roommates, just friends, even just hangout groups, because some people do not live on campus. And so some of them were roommates off campus. And, it was just really helpful because at first, like when you would see the Sac State 2025 Instagram account, it's kind of like not a lot of Black people, but while you're scrolling, you see some here and there. But once you saw the just Black Sac State students, you were able to see everyone and how many like just freshmen there were. So I was like, imagine how many, other students there are that are not just freshmen.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And I am curious what other, if there's any other strategies that people are thinking of that can help students to kind of find that campus community. If, you go on campus, you don't feel like it's there, like, but what are some strategies that people can use to find those communities?
One other thing that may help if they're going to end up being on campus, we went on YouTube and we were able to literally find her dorm because we were debating which dorms we wanted. We went in we were like fans because we wanted to see the dorm and it allowed us to start to learn the culture and who's there and different folks. So honestly, right now, I would say online access in any capacity would help.
I also am thinking about for students and parents who are on reaching out, like if you know your list of schools, talk to your teachers and your principals. They may know people already at those schools and are beyond willing to make a connection, to have that person reach out to you, send you some stuff, like access your family's community. Even if your family is like my family didn't go to college, they may know people who did, or, oh yeah, well, my cousin works there. But just all of these different pieces are connectors to the campus. And the only way that I got housing or knew about the theme program floor was because a friend had a sister who lived on the floor her year and then knew somebody. And it was just like those sorts of connections. So start talking up to people that, hey, I'm thinking about these schools, chemistry teacher. I know that you have that flag on your door that says University of Oregon. I want to go there. Do you still know someone there?
Azriel, you have your hand up.
Also, something that I have noticed being on TikTok, a lot of people who do go to any university, they typically tag whatever school it is. So if you want to get a feel of like what's going on up there or what they have to say about the school, you can kind of like put in the tag and see what like TikToks they have for the school, and that might be able to help too.
All right, I appreciate that perspective because I'm not on TikTok. Aisha, you have your hand up also.
Yeah, I'm thinking about also too, just the obviously the power and like finding and connecting with these different support groups. And then I'm thinking about a group of students at Cal State East Bay that I work with who took the initiative to create their own group. So also just putting out there that even if there isn't something there, you can reach out to other students and create something for yourself. Because a group of the Cal State East Bay students that I work with, they created a wellness group because they were aware that they needed support and they needed each other. So they started a bi-weekly meetup. And I just thought that was really dope. So definitely want to put out the power of taking initiative and just asking a question and seeing else who wants to connect with you too.
All right. Thanks everyone for that. William, I'm going to send this question your way. Where can families go to learn if a college has dedicated Black spaces or if there are student organizations where young people can see themselves and feel empowered?
So I believe that in our school district, what we are really looking to do is strengthen the college going culture, especially for our Black students. And so one of the things we did last school year during the shelter in place was we hosted a variety of workshops that allowed for the parents, guardians, and children to explore the different colleges. The main thing would be like what Azriel said, social media is a very good place to look. And then you could do checks and balances and then even contact the school and say, hey, I saw this. Can you give me more information? The other thing that I really urge our children, especially our Black children, to do is to really make appointments with their high school counselor. We have college and career counselors. And so we urge our students to really make appointments, get into their office, ask questions, because they have resources as well for you. And then lastly, what we were hoping to do this year, but again, because of the pandemic, we were hoping to take some children on a college tour. And so when things clear up, we definitely want to get that going again, as well as take students to Washington, D.C., just so they can even learn how to, research things more on their own by going through different programs and networking with people out there.
Cool. Edith, I'm going to come to you next.
I think it's funny, I was listening to talking about, it was a professor for me because some of the things that we're talking about, I just want to say not everybody is into Greek life. I was a little bit older, a little more of an introvert, and I was a cheerleader for, so I had a whole, and I danced. But I sought out my Black professors and I had them kind of help me and hook me up with different organizations, which was really helpful. And through that, I was able to go study abroad in China. So I really want to encourage the youth. I think it's great to kind of go to your peers, but I also think it's really nice to kind of step to your elders. And so when you get to your school and you find your major, in your major, if there are Black professors, or I'm going to talk about those equity-based professors who let you know they're down for your cause because they see you, not like seeing you, but they really see you and they make themselves available. But I really think it's important to reach out to them too, because some of the best networking opportunities I had came from my professor of African history. I got to teach a 79-year-old woman from the South how to read, random. Like I said, I studied abroad in China, super random, among other things that he set me up with. I also became his research assistant, which was really cool to have a job. I'm gonna date myself, but I was making like $7 an hour. It was $7.50. That was a lot of money back then too, by the way. So, but I became his research assistant and that's how I learned how to write. And also he turned me on to another person that ran like a kind of underground newspaper. And so he kind of sent me out to go find my peers to gather things for them to go publish. So I'm saying all that to say that all that happened because I stepped out in faith and I talked to like what I would consider my uncle. So God rest Dr. Holmes. I don't know if he's still on this earth, but I really want to encourage the youth, like those office hours are set up for a reason, and to use them, like really go take a step out in faith and go check into who people are. They also, by the way, helped me out with a bunch of unnamed scholarships. So I got hooked up with free money that way as well. And then I got invited to like really cool random events that I never would have gone to, and really just got to be a part of something in academia that, not saying that the youth wouldn't have got me there, but it was definitely an adult who saw me, who kind of hooked me up with like a whole other genre of grownups, which was great for my resume, by the way. So.
Awesome, that's great advice. I'm gonna go back up to another question. William, again, I'm gonna come to you. What programs and support increase the likelihood that a student will succeed at the school academically?
Talking about college, correct?
Yes.
Well, For me, it's really about the social network. If you have a good social network, then that's something that will help you succeed. I feel that when I'm talking with students about what we needed to emphasize in our school district, it was really the discussion of let us be a little more self-sufficient. And what I mean by that is that they were telling us, and this was my experience as well, but high school was more challenging than college because you had your teachers who were like assigning you things every day, and there was this accountability. Whereas when you get to college, sometimes you might not have a paper due for 2 weeks. And so how do I, as a student, self-govern myself to get the assignments turned in? So that was something that they were talking about, is really being able to be self-sufficient and having a good social network to really, that's what helped them to be successful in college.
Thank you for that. Kiana, I'm going to ask you the same question.
I love this kind of question because I think that a lot of times we talk a lot about college preparation. And one of the things that I'm pushing in my office is to talk more about college graduation, right? And I think that those are like two different things. Well, it's not too different, but, and I kind of spoke to this on Saturday, but what are the qualities and characteristics that we are building in our kids at a younger age that's going to allow them to graduate from college? So are we including conversations about grit and perseverance and accountability, which is huge, right? Like there's just so many different layers outside of A through G requirements that we got to start having the conversation about. And so I think that for me, it's really about having those personal development type of conversations outside of college preparation, because grades didn't get me to Berkeley. I wouldn't say obviously I did great in school, but that got me to Cal, but it didn't get me out of Cal. My perseverance is what got me out of UC Berkeley. My ability to network and take advantage of resources is what got me out of Cal, And so I think that it's really time to shift for Black kids in particular, to shift the conversation towards those qualities and characteristics that's really going to help grow them personally, that's going to get them to graduate. Because I think, I have so many students at Berkeley, and I pulled my data recently from all the students I graduated from my program 6 years ago. The majority of our students have graduated from Berkeley, which is amazing. But now I'm like, how did they do it? And I think that part of the conversation in us checking in with them is that we did so much work personally that helped them academically. And so I think that's a really important shift that we've made in our program, more focus on personal than academic, because I think it shows up in the academics once we address the personal.
Thank you for that. Casey, I'm going to go to you.
Thank you. I'll just plus one on what Mr. McGee was talking about in terms of self-governing and teaching kids how to really do long-term planning and in some ways not get caught up and stuck. And then when they do get stuck, I think it was Edith was talking about some of this is a circumstance, and now you got to decide what are you going to do. Okay, you didn't turn that paper in on time. You have some options. And I think even exploring what those options are and talking to students about talking to your professor and making a plan and, doing all of this kind of stuff. And a piece of advice that a student used to always say at UC Berkeley when I was there, Kiana, you'll know this, which is it's hard to fail a friend. And so go to office hours, go to office hours, go to office hours. And so show up, and it is awkward. Yes, you're in this tiny office and you don't really even know what question to ask because you didn't do the reading. But you're going to go anyway, just to say that I'm committed, I want to do better, but it's going to save you in that time when you chose the wrong activity to do on that Friday. You should have not gone to the party, right? You should not have gone to the step show, but you did. And so now you need to cash in on all of those office hours that you did times before.
I appreciate the note on office hours. I used to be very terrified to go to office hours, particularly because I was a Black student, because I felt like if I went to office hours, then I would be the only person going, and the professor would feel like, oh, of course the, Black student in my class needs help, but all the students were there. It wasn't just me. And so once I realized that, I was like, all right, I need to stop being in my head and just do what I need to do to help myself. So I appreciate you pointing that out. There's a question in the chat that I wanted to bring up. It asks, what advice do you give students about college in COVID times? And do you recommend that they wait to go to college away from home? Edith, I'll go to you. Your hand went right up.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody asked this, because this is really deep, and I'm speaking from a parent. As a parent, very recently, my son goes to a school in the district, but we get the daily calls about positive results, and then we got a call that he had close contact, and then he came home not feeling well, and then we did an at-home test, and then we went to a testing center. And I'm saying all this to say that it was incredibly stressful. And so I think if I could tell parents anything in 2022, we have to stop comparing our lives to our kids' lives, because they're living through things that I don't know. I used to get kicked out to the street lights came on, like that was my drama, and maybe not eating lunch because we had to go pick lemons off so-and-so's tree, but I lived. But what's happening right now is that, our kids' brain health is really, it's just really, 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 that should be like on our heart, and it should be our first priority. And so before I say whether or not a kid should go away to school during COVID or not, I want to know how that kid is feeling and how they're able to deal with the pressure and the stress. Because as a middle school mom, I didn't realize the weight of what was going on until it was my son's birthday a couple of weeks ago. He's a Capricorn. But I read an email and mentioned out loud that he had close contact with someone who came up positive, and it just really stressed him out. And I hadn't really thought about it. So I just want to say to all parents that nothing is more important than how we are dealing with this big organ in our heads right now. We call it mental health, but the reality is if we called it brain health, you would look at it like you're working out a muscle. When we say mental health, there's such a stigma to that. But when you look at your child's brain health, I want to know, are they ready? Are they okay living in the conditions that might be about this? If not, there's nothing wrong with waiting. There's nothing wrong at all. So I would ask that, for parents, you do exactly what Ms. Goldie Audra, and I love that woman, love you, Dr. Sue. Hi, Ozzy, it's so good to see you. But you do exactly what she said to do as a parent, which some of us were raised in that generation that children will be seen and not heard. I might be dating myself again too. But I vote that you listen to your kids and you see how they're feeling before you decide, because I think a lot of kids, we often want to make our parents happy. I'm almost 50 and I love making my parents happy. But as a parent, maybe what we think would make us happy has to shift in these times. So I know I had to slow my world down and wait for these negative tests to realize that in my hecticness, I forgot to look at something so simple, that my 14-year-old is living through really scary times right now. And it's okay for me to slow the world down and go get some cheesecake and not worry about it. So before we decide, like, do you go away to school or do you do whatever? I survived 4 years of a junior college. That's a whole story. I still have a master's degree and I just applied to grad school. Like, it'll be okay whether they go in June when they graduate or whether they go in 2 years. So please, for the sake of our children, because what's going on with brain health is real. The number 2 cause of death for kids, I think it's age 12 to 24, is self-harm. So please check in on them and see how they're doing before you make decisions for them.
Thanks for that, Edith. Azriel, I'm gonna go to you.
I piggyback right off of what Ms. McCormick said. Also, for me, I feel like if my mom wasn't so open to letting me decide on what I wanted to do, I feel like I wouldn't have been able to grow into the person that I am. Because yes, of course, mental health matters, of course, at all costs. And that's one big thing that I think a lot of parents realize, but they don't realize it. Like for me, for some of my friends that are here, some of their parents are like, oh, because COVID's going back up, we're going to keep you home, And I don't think a lot of them realize what that does to their mental health, because yes, they love being at home and yes, it's fun being with your family. But when you get into that life of already being at school and, being on your own and just realizing how independent you want to be, it really takes a toll on your mental health when you have to get that stripped away from you right away. So yes, if you can, I would say go to a 2-year, because don't rush it, and it's no reason to waste the money if of course you're not ready. But if you are ready, parents, listen to your children and I know that you think you have our best interest at heart sometimes, but sometimes you just have to let us go out into the world and do what we need to do, because regardless, you're going to help us if we fail or not, do not fail. So yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Goldie, your hand's up also.
Who is that young woman's mother? Shameless plug. I want to piggyback a little bit too. So as we're thinking about our kids at all times, we have to remember the timeline they're on. You have children that their last time they were physically in school, like on a regular basis, was 9th grade or 10th grade. Is a 9th or 10th grader ready to fast forward to go to college? Maybe. But those are the things you have to slow down. We literally cannot apply anything we've known. My birthday was January 9th. I'm a Capricorn. I'm 53. So I'm dating myself intentionally. What I experienced is not what my kids experience, and I can't apply it. The other thing is, for me, when we were considering if she should be in person, and I'm thinking, she's going to live on campus for thousands of dollars and be online? And everything logically is like, girl, please, we ain't doing that. Don't even make no sense. No. But as we talked to him, I'm just telling you, I was like, that don't make, if all you bodies came in, that don't make no sense. And as we talked and discussed it, I really realized, I'm telling you, I had to keep stepping back and taking the bigger picture. And she was able to articulate what she wanted made sense. And at the end of the day, she was robbed of her senior year. She was robbed of part of her junior year. I watched kids who, the first year that kids went to the pandemic hit and they went to college and then didn't go to college and stayed home. There were kids that were, like you said, why am I going to, they had such meltdowns. So I just kind of balanced it and was like, she has her hand on the pulse, and the worst thing that can happen, we bring her home. There's always that chance. So what I would say is, y'all, parents, you might have to look at the finances if it makes sense for your family. If it's really tight, maybe, but empower the student. What I'll say is, me watching the students that I deal with, the parents that are not inclusive of their children, the children are having a really hard time. They don't have a lot of control of a lot, and they've lost so much. So where we can give them control, and even if it's not control, give them input and some say, it's helpful. And then nothing has to be overnight. I'm gonna be honest, in the beginning, it didn't make sense. I was waiting to see what would happen. And then I realized for her, it just made sense for her to have whatever sort of college experience she could have, even if it meant being safe in the dorms while doing her classes online, while this. So I would say for parents, look at the money for your family, but make sure you include your kids and really factor in that pandemic piece. And where you can, if you can really trust your child, regardless of who they've been in the past, trust your child now, because you are saying it and you are seeing it. Our kids, the words you're going to hear me say for the next years, our kids are not okay. And I mean that, they're not okay.
Thank you, everyone, for all of your input on that. For our next question, where can parents and students alike learn more about a college's commitment to diversity within a student's chosen field of study? I'm going to go to Aisha.
Sorry, I'm still kind of marinating on what we were just talking about too. So,
if you have other thoughts on that too, you feel free to share.
Well, continuing on that, then also to answer that too. Yes, especially around what Ms. McCormick was saying, or is it Ms. McCormick or Mrs. McCormick? I'm sorry.
You can call me Edith.
Okay, Edith. Around brain health, I think about heart health I think about emotional well-being, and I kid you not, that's been like the number one thing that I talk about with students the most right now. And along with like what everybody is saying around parents checking in and talking with their kids, I would just really advocate normalize and really encourage your students or your children to be okay with seeking therapy, seeking counseling. I know that's a taboo topic in our community, but I think we need to get more comfortable with talking about that, because I've talked with students on a daily who have had fears of speaking about things or talking about things in terms of like, let it be their family that doesn't want to talk about it, or it's not something they need to address. But you can't keep these things in, and the pandemic is bringing it all to like the surface. So I definitely would just advocate with like your children, advocating, create like a space where they feel comfortable, let it be talking to you or even getting comfortable talking to somebody else too over time. So definitely would just advocate that. And then what was the question again? Because sorry, I'm so stuck on because it's just where we're at. It's just where we're at right now.
Definitely. It's extremely relevant.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So the other question was, where can parents and students alike learn more about a college's commitment to diversity with a student's chosen field of study within a student's?
Yeah, I think it's about what comes to my mind right now is partnership, right? And I think this is coming up, especially as I see like the mother and daughter duo on here. And I'm thinking about what Edith had said earlier about partnering with like her professors on campus. So I would just encourage parents to partner with their children and, seek those different resources and programs that are out there. Let it be college success programs like the TRIO program, College Track, Making Waves, all these different organizations out there that can help navigate and lead and direct you to that process of like, once you get to college, how to talk to different professors, how to seek like the cross-cultural center on campus, and how to just feel comfortable asking questions and knowing like what you need and like what your child needs. So that's what I would encourage.
Let's go to Kiana.
Thank you. I think that so when the question was first asked, I get a little because on a flyer will say one thing, right? Like I even think of a school like Berkeley, and then you'll see all the little Black kids on the flyer, and then you get there and you like,
where are they?
Where the Black kids at? Like I don't know. So I think for me, don't be deceived by the flyers. Like, let's just start there, honestly, and so I think one of the things, and I think Casey talked about this too, is like really accessing your network and just seeing like, who do I know? Like if I'm sending a kid to San Francisco State, then I'm gonna say, hey kid, also go look for my friend in this department at San Francisco State so that we can get you connected. And it was the same thing for my own personal experience here at Berkeley. Like, hey, we're sending you to Berkeley. And for me, it wasn't a campus resource, but we want you to go to this church down the street. Right. And so because I got connected with that church, I got connected with Casey my freshman year. And now we're here today together, And so I think that like one of the biggest things is connections and building a community with kids early on. So one of the things that I do with my own students is that if someone says, oh, I want to be a nurse. Oh, you want to be a nurse? One of my college best friends is a nurse. She went to UC Berkeley. She went to UCLA for medical school or nursing school. Let me call her right now so that you can talk to her while we sitting here together. So like it's instant connection for me that also helps to see kids, let them know that I'm part of a wider network. And so it's the same for me when it comes to institutions. Like I have a Rolodex. If a kid wants to go to Dominguez, I have someone there. And so I think like our personal connections really matter and help for kids to see, like there's diversity in these places because Miss Kiana is connected to them. So they must be good people. They must be good institutions. And so I think like that's one thing, but I also know that like asking questions are really important. Those campus visits are really important. I think that one of the things is just reading the language and looking at data. Like real numbers give us real information at the same time. So I wouldn't excuse the data, but I also know that experience does matter and like connections matter. So I would definitely start with like those personal connections and someone that can speak to, like what's really happening at an institution.
I appreciate that. Definitely for me, having gone to Berkeley, being a civil engineer, I was one of two Black students in the entire College of Engineering. And it just felt like, okay, who do I have? Like, who are my resources? Nobody looks like me. Is my career going to be like this? Like, what do I have? You know, what's next? Like, is this just going to be what it is? And I do feel like for me, like I got a little bit overwhelmed by that and didn't really, it took me a while to find the resources and to see, you know, National Society of Black Engineers and just finding all those things. Like now that I am, you know, graduated in 2010. And so now I feel like I have all those networks and all those connections. And I'm, you know, now trying to like talk to those groups and, you know, being in my career saying, hey, like, I want to like pull you guys in to my job and my company and other companies like mine, you know, to see more people that look like me. And so I wish that I had been able to take more advantage of that when I actually was in college. So I appreciate that, you know, we're talking about this now and trying to get students to discuss these things now. William, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I do. And yeah, you're an engineer. That's too much science for me. I knew I wasn't, you know, made for that. But what I also wanted to say is that we're talking about something that's real. A lot of times, Black students are going to campuses, like you said, and they might be the only Black person in that class, or there's another one who's sitting across the room, right? What I do feel is a successful thing that we've got to do, and we've got to empower our students to do, is hold the colleges accountable. Go up into them advisors' classes, go to the Office of Student Life. And if you are that Black student in science, engineering, you know, NASA Space School, or whatever the case may be, say to them, I want you to create a Black networking pathway for me. Get somebody in here who looks like me, because oftentimes we're not teaching our children to do that. And then they may change their major because they don't see people like them. Whereas if you just said, hey, professor, you teach him, you know, I don't know what you did in engineering. Like, I can't even quote anything, right? But, you know, you doing something like some DuPont class or something. I don't know. Get some Black people in there to do some talking or set up some networking. Give me an internship set up, you know, because I had to tell my advisor in college, because she was so rude to me one time. And I said, just because I'm an adult, I'm still a student and I need support. So that doesn't give you that right to be rude. And I tell students, just because you're a college student and you're an adult, they still need to give you that support you need.
Goldie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, William hit a bunch of stuff dead on. I hear a lot of kids talk about changing their major for different reasons. And what I would say is encourage them to stay the course unless there's a reason to change. Just stay the course. The other thing I wrote down is advocate. One of the things that I'm always pushing my daughter is to be an advocate on her own behalf. When her roommates and friends talk to me, I go, you all need to think about what happened last summer. That was because of young people. Like, the reality is, us old heads, we want to write policy, we want to change the system, but them kids out there in those streets, that made them go, okay, we're listening. So they have so much power, and especially collectively, even like in terms of the food, what is it called? Where she eats, I can't think what it's, the cafeteria, whatever it's called. But they have to advocate on their behalf. What's happened is they've advocated, they've held meetings. So now I'm about to step in. What I do, I'm in my own business, I have an HR business, and our focus is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I go to corporations and talk to them about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now I'm about to bring every single DEI word that I know to bring it to them. There's a few things that are happening on the campus that I'm so bothered by, but I'm not going to step in and say, follow me. I'm following from the rear. You guys, what are we doing? And when I'm talking to her friends, what are we going to do? Well, you have to advocate on your behalf. Like, a scenario happened, I tell them, I make them go first, or not make, but I allow them to go first. And depending on what happens, then I step in. And what I'll say is, Teach your kids to be advocating for themselves the entire time. Because when we're talking about disrupting systems and tearing down systems of racism and oppression, the reality is these systems have been in place a long time. And sometimes people don't even see what's going on. And I'm not making an excuse. What I'm saying is you can't fight every fight, y'all. But as students, you're going to have to say, this is a big thing to me. Come on, y'all, and not one person. Come on, y'all, let's go talk to them. What he said is exactly right. There's a scenario like this is like comedy gold that she's in a criminal justice field. And they're doing like the scenario she gave me. I'm like, oh my God, that's illegal. and it's not funny. But what I mean is it's ironic. And my point is that our kids are going to face stuff, and we have to really, in my opinion, push them to advocate on their own behalf and support them, and then go in with the big dogs right behind them too. Advocate, advocate, advocate.
Thank you for that. And talking about advocating, it's kind of tying into this next question. I'm going to ask you, Goldie, to start this one off. How do parents support their children to work through educational experiences in K through 12 that undermine their academic confidence?
You don't want me to answer that.
I do.
That's a powder keg. Woo! Feel hot and bothered. So I'm gonna be succinct as I can. Teach your children to trust themselves. And then you have to trust your kid. What do I mean by that? If something happens, I don't care what was the scenario. I was sending the emails to the teacher, and I don't care what my daughter said happened. Hey, I'm here. I want to work with you, blah, 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 blah. Let's partner, blah, 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 blah. Boom. Azriel stated, won't. And I wanted to hear from you first. So I don't ever go in for the kill. I don't do anything. I want to hear, because what I had to learn first was I needed to learn my own kid. Is she telling me stuff accurately? When I realized she was, and there were scenarios, one of the ways you can support your child, I'm telling you, it's hard, y'all, but y'all got to be engaged. You've got to be engaged. The thing, and I'm going to tell you something. It's a balance, and I'm not talking to nobody's parenting. I have so many things I would change as a parent. So this is not me. I'm speaking from experience of my failures. I'm speaking from my experience of what I changed and what worked. At one point, Azriel had a counselor that told her she should not go to a 4-year university, that she should go to a 2-year. She had a science teacher tell her the exact same thing because she was struggling. Well, it just so happens during the time she was struggling, she was being bullied and a whole bunch of other stuff. When all this was going on, it affected her mental health. What is it going to affect? Her grades. So now we're talking about Black students. The thing is, I needed my daughter to understand if she was a white student, there's a good chance that it would have been handled differently. And since it wasn't, how do I get in? Now, to be very honest with you, when my son went through stuff, I wasn't as equipped as I was with my daughter on how to support her. So it goes back to networks. You got William McGee right there. If you're a Black parent and something's going down, you check in. And if he don't know, he gonna tell you who to talk to, what to do. There were so many things we should have done for my son that I wasn't aware of. And I was vocal. I shared what was going on, but I didn't know. Once I knew, for her, I was not gonna allow her to fall through the cracks. So I'm gonna give you this tidbit to explain how advocating with your child helps. Azriel said she was going to a 4-year. So I didn't care what that counselor said or that teacher said. She said it. So she's the authority. She's the author and finisher of her faith. I'm in. She's going to a 4-year. If we get proven wrong, we'll see. But I know how things go. So we're going to push. Her first choice was Sacramento State. Sacramento State declined her. She got all her acceptance letters came from other schools. And when she said she wanted to go, I said, appeal. She appealed, and she's where she wanted to be. After being told she shouldn't go to a 4-year, after being told she should go to a 2-year, after being denied to go to the university, she's where she wanted to be. Trust your kids, believe in your kids, and fight for your kids. At the end of the day, and this was, some of our fights started pre-pandemic. Right now, what I would tell y'all, fight for your kids. Like, fight for your kids and trust them. I was going to ask if you had something to say. Her hands
up. Go ahead.
Sorry, somebody's at my door. But for me, something that really helped was having my mom be my advocate. sometimes kids, their grades fail and parents are automatically just inclined to jump on the student and what happened? What did you do? Something that helped me was she always like just stayed in the background. I would come to her with it and I would say, hey, this is what happened. And she wouldn't say, okay, you need to fix that grade right now, or you need to do this right now, do that assignment. She would always be very lenient because with that, it helped me become my own person and learn to do it myself. Because when parents sometimes tend to just jump on your back and just yell at you, take away stuff, it tends to make you like, I don't want to do anything. If you're going to like, what's the point of doing it if you're just going to take it away if I fail one little bit? Because everyone is not perfect. Of course, we have our failures and stuff. So just making sure that you work with your kid and be their advocate.
Thank you both. Appreciate the fire and the energy on that. Casey, I'm going to come to you with the same question.
You say the question again, and I may not have anything to add because I feel like that was the bomb, but say it one more time for me.
Okay. How do parents support their children to work through educational experiences in K through 12 that undermine their academic confidence?
Yeah, I sort of put my head down because I'm like, oh yeah, it's so sad. It's hard, I think, when, or you all know, when you go through K-12 and you have teachers or just people who don't believe on you and don't listen and don't trust. And so I think in the seat that I sit in now as a principal, a school administrator, so often I'm trying to undo harm that other schools and teachers have done. And I will get parents in the office and they are already ready to fight me. And it's like, well, let's start by naming what our shared goals are for this young person, listening to the student and just saying, like, it could be whatever issue it is, and we're going to start our meeting with what's your vision of excellence and what's your vision of success for your young person. And so that allows parents to kind of talk about their kid. And as long as I'm able to acknowledge that they are the expert on their kid and I'm just here to partner with them, then sometimes we can get on good footing. I think Goldie was spot on when she was just saying that emailing teachers, talking to school leaders and just saying, here's what my kid said. I'd love to hear your perspective as well. Just like I told a young person in my office today, I was like, my job is to believe kids and my job is to believe teachers. And right now, I'm sure what happened is what happened in your head and what happened in the teacher's head. And now we have to find a way to really restore that relationship. And so I think for families who have been hurt in K-12 situations, and a lot of times the hurt that comes is sometimes their own hurt that then they are carrying with their children through K-12. They're remembering what happened to them when they were in 6th grade or 9th grade. And so now when their young person is in 5th grade and 11th grade, they're still trying to grapple with that as a parent. And so I don't know what the answer is other than new grace every day, and just try and allow schools to be new and school personnel to be new, and also assume that your kid is right and the school is not trying to do harm to your kid. And that's a hard assumption to ask parents to make. And I recognize that. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think the charge then actually is probably less on parents maybe and more on the schools and on school leaders to try and create that grounding for families to be able to come in and share and to have hard conversations. And the next time when you see that parent, greet them with the good morning, just like you would every other parent, even though they said some really choice words to you, but just know that like we're building this relationship. And so that partnership has to extend from here until, your kid gets to the goal that we have already aligned that we have for them.
All right. William, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
Ooh, wow. It's a deep question. The reason I feel it's a deep question is because we're dealing with the system that was never meant to educate Black children. And we're dealing with the system that does not know how to deal with that family who I think Miss Casey said, who didn't trust us in the first place. And then, you know, me being a Black man, I'm working in a racist institution. And I don't just mean the district I work in, but education as a whole. And so there have been times I've had to carry out policies that were not right. Because again, I think Miss Casey says something about, you know, you have the teacher or the adults version, and then you have the child's version, what's in between, and how do you support everyone? And so Miss Goldie, who is off the hook, you know, as she mentioned, you give your child that autonomy, but then you also support your child. And, you know, I almost did not graduate from high school on time, despite my mother being a teacher for 40 years. But it wasn't until I became a teacher that I really named racism in education, and I saw what happened to me. So if I can remember your question, because I know I'm going down a rabbit hole, the school system, I think, has a lot of work to do. And what we are trying to do when you talk about West Contra Costa, which I applaud our district for making the strides and recognizing the need to do things differently for Black children, Black employees, and Black families. We have an African-American site advisory team who was instrumental in helping the board pass a resolution to support Black students. And that's why I say, you know, hats off to West Contra Costa, because we know that there's something going on that is not right for Black children, but then we still have to do more. And so again, I think your question was about disenfranchising children or something like that. I think sometimes a child walks into our school building, certain school buildings, and they just are unmotivated. They come from a house who preaches and practices education. They might come from a house that's not traumatic, but they see trauma at school. And so then how do we work on improving that so that that Black child, because we're speaking about Black students, right? So that that Black child can then have a good experience at school and then continue that. And I think the last thing I want to say is that we do have to have more Black educators. We have to have more Black administrators. And I keep saying the last thing, but I'm still talking, so you're going to have to put me on mute, Melinda. But, you know, my mom is from Virginia. My dad moved out here. I was born out here. I grew up in East Palo Alto. In my elementary school career, I had a lot of Black teachers. But when we moved to the East Bay, Black teachers were far and few in between. We had Black administrators in East Palo Alto. And so how do we get more Black professionals, Black educators in front of our students so that our students can see that? But then there's also that Black adult that can make a connection that sometimes a non-Black person can't make. And, you know, there's also times where that Black person doesn't make a good connection, but 9 times out of 10, the connection is good. So how do we do that? So then that child also has another resource that they can see at the school. And we're talking about Black people, right? This is a panel. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes. All the benefits for our Black students out there. And I know that this is a, you know, very passionate question. So before I move on, I want to make sure if Aisha or Kiana have anything you want to add on this. All right. Okay, so our last preset question, what are ways to preserve your culture or rituals in less diverse or predominantly white institutions, college spaces? I am gonna ask Kiana about this one first.
Yeah, I think it's not even just college, it's also like high schools as well. Because I think working in schools, like I worked at De Anza for a couple of years, and so many times, like I show up as a Black woman unapologetically wherever I go. And so showing up in a college and career center specifically at De Anza, and all the Black kids coming in there with me, it's like a party every day, and I bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We eating cereal. We hanging out in the morning because some of these kids don't have breakfast. And so I'm going to bring breakfast for my kids, and might turn into a breakfast party, and the other people wasn't okay with it. And they would complain and say, oh, y'all too loud, or there's too much. There's too many kids in here. There ain't no capacity, so it ain't too much. Like, this is who we are. And so I think that for me, I had to and then if I wasn't there and the kids come in there, then I would get complaints about, oh, these kids are in here, they too loud and blah, blah, blah. So the kids are coming to me like, Miss Kiana, when you're not here, we don't feel welcomed in here. So it's like, how do I set up a space for my students to be themselves? And for me, I'm a walking example of that. So I had to learn to be comfortable in who I am and whatever space I show up in. So then my students that are coming behind me also feel comfortable in doing the same thing. It's the same thing at work. I'm going to show up as a Black woman. There's this lady, Dr. Mia Settles Tidwell from UC Berkeley. And I heard her say, and I think she's like an El Cerrito alum and all this great stuff. And so she introduced herself a few years ago, and she was like, hi, I'm Mia Settles Tidwell, and I'm unapologetically a Black woman. Aside from her titles, it's how and it blew my mind. I was like, oh, we can say that at UC Berkeley? I can, I can introduce myself like that. And then I admired her from then on, but it was so now that's how I show up to work. And I think that bringing that level of authenticity, bringing that level of I eat greens, I eat fried chicken, and I'm bringing it to work because it's what I had last night, and I'm not going to show up on campus and bring kale salad. I don't eat kale, I really don't. And so for me, I really want to show up. And that's how I feel like I preserve who I am, where I come from. I come from Inglewood. My grandmother's from Alabama. We eat liver, this is just who I am. And so I don't want to pretend like I'm something else just because I have a title behind my name. And when I show up in rooms and I say I'm president of California, that doesn't mean anything if I don't show up as a Black woman with a grandmother that had to walk miles and miles to school. You know what I mean? No. So I think for me, I walk in my truth of who I am every day. And it helps my students then see me as a real person, and then they can be them real selves around me as well. So now we partying together. Okay, I shouldn't say I'm for Mr. McGee, but I be at my kids' graduation parties with their families, and they feel comfortable with inviting me because of who I am and who I've been in their lives. And that's community, that's culture, and that's education. And so I think that's how I do it. I'm just me every day. I talk Ebonics with my kids, I don't cuss in front of them, but we gonna talk like we talk on the streets. So
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry, but I don't want to apologize.
No, that was perfect. Aisha, I'm gonna come to you next.
Yeah, I love it. I love it all. Don't apologize for who we are and for our truth. And it's interesting because this question brings up a lot for me, as it does for all of us. And, I'm thinking about just the power of definitely owning your truth, and also the power of that one mentor in your life. Because I'm thinking back to a particular story in college for me. I was a film major, and I was in a program of 60 students. And of those 60 students, it was predominantly white. There were only 2 other Black students, me and Chanel, knew each other. And long story short, for the final film project, everybody had to submit their script. And then if your script got selected, you got to direct it. I wrote a story that was centered around race. Actually, it was about racial discrimination, but I did not want to submit my script because I had this thought in my mind, these group of white kids are not going to want to hear this story or support that. And I had a mentor, shout out to Ron Najer, who I was working with. And when I told him what was going on, I remember he said to me, he was like, you can't dim your light for other people. If you got a story to tell, you need to tell that story. And it's interesting because it's not like I had not heard that from like family members and friends, and there had not been other times in my life where I had to stand up and own like who I was and, you know, what was important to me. But there are those different times in your journey where like you will question it and you will kind of shrink back. And in those moments when like you're shrinking back, you could hold back something important that somebody else needs to hear or somebody else needs to be empowered by. But shout out to my mentor for that, because I ended up submitting my script and it got selected. And I always hold on to that as like a moment in my life, anytime where I think like, oh, I shouldn't speak up or I shouldn't be myself or I shouldn't share my truth, because don't tell yourself no. Everybody else can tell you no, but you don't have to tell yourself no. So just don't deny your truth. Don't deny who you are. And the more you are comfortable with like yourself and preserving your story, your cultural norms, let it be like eating greens or eating a kale smoothie, whatever it may be for you, the more comfortable you are with that, other people will accept that. So that's what I would, you know, offer to students and encourage them with. And also too, there's going to be different like peaks and valleys, because you could have moments where like your authenticity and your confidence is high, and then moments it can go low again. But you got to stay consistent and committed to that journey and not forget to like stay true to who you are.
Goldie, I'm gonna go to you for the same question.
A couple of things. I love what you talked about with your students and feeding them and partying. And the more we educate ourselves on our culture and where we come from, our culture is always good. It's always okay. And a lot of times, a large part of our journey is just educating. You know, in a scenario like that, where you were saying, you don't want to say this in front of William, he was nodding with you. I go to events because that's what our culture does. If you have shown up in a certain way, people are including you in their family, and that's our culture. And I'm not backing away from that. I'm not shying away from that. So I think that unapologetic piece is there, and that's it. And then educating, being able to explain, literally because I know the principals, go to the principal to say, hey, this is what I'm doing with these kids. What can we do so that I can just share what I'm doing? Can I just do a 15-minute informational to the staff at some staff meeting so they can understand what's happening? Because people have to be educated. People's unconscious bias and conscious bias rules them. And we're held to so many different standards. And it gets tiresome to, like, we just want to be. We just want to live. And here you are doing this phenomenal thing, meeting those kids where they are, and somebody's complaining. And that's typical. And it's like, I think when I started working at Kaiser, it was in 1989. I was 19 years old. I was indoctrinated into how to be a code switcher and white. I sounded Caucasian then. I can't even make myself go back. I don't even know how to sound like I used to sound because I've been so authentically me for so long. I have a client right now. If you could see real close, I have twisty braids. This is a Wakanda hairstyle. And this is how I rocked my hair when I delivered the DEI training. Because look at my nails. That's not no corporate nails. That's my nails. This is how I show up in these trainings so they can understand. And then I share different pieces. And I was telling them this story about watermelon and chicken. But as a people, like literally, I have people that I know that are like, oh no, we will not eat watermelon and chicken in public. Why not? If you slow down and look, fried chicken is cooked by every race that you know. It is not a Black food only. And watermelon is a healthy, delicious treat. So I don't care what their opinions are. I remember when Obama won the first time, I said, I'm going to Safeway, I'm going to buy me a watermelon, and I'm just going to walk around the store. And I was being facetious. But my point is that we have to be unapologetically Black. We like the things that we share, educate people. Her saying that, like they told you, don't dim your light. And y'all don't know who I'm pointing at, but you know about what I'm saying. But you know that when she said she was unapologetically Black, you started walking in your truth. Some of y'all gonna go get colors on your nails. No, I'm kidding. The truth of the matter is that what I say about culture is, I love what you said, us showing up authentically. I don't have to come and speak the King's English to be heard by my students. I don't have to do that to be considered educated. And anybody that feels that way, that's them. I'm talking in front of energy companies, and I talk like I talk. And as I'm talking to y'all, there's moments where I sound more educated, and there's other times where I'm like, no, he didn't. And I don't change for them, because at the end of the day, they need to see, and I explain, they're getting an introduction to DEI through the eyes of an African-American woman. I have a Latina woman on my staff. We want them to see authentically, this is how we show up. And then there's some stories they need to hear. Same thing for these students. The kids already know DEI, it's all in them. Like as a kid, I knew DEI, I just didn't know what to call it. I knew racism, I didn't know what to call it. I knew discrimination, I didn't know what to call it. I knew where they're like watching, why do they get to do that? And we just make a little tiny noise and everybody's on top of us. If you saw the Colin Kaepernick story,
Yes.
I experienced that stuff where in this time and age, in my opinion, it's really important for us to live out loud and to not dim our light, so that we can, like that poem, so that we can encourage others to shine the same way. So for me, and especially in this environment, but even when you get to college, letting our students, like you all said, for my daughter, all those Black kids being together, it's important because there's things that they share. My daughter, she'll cook some soul food and invite kids that don't have no food. That's our culture. She'll cook some food and invite kids that don't have, she'll cook some nachos. It's not even just cultural food. We share food. So who we are, and then to progress, I'm showing up with doing what y'all are doing in corporations. I am disrupting racism. I'm disrupting systems, and then teaching them, how do you put it together? How do you build a system that works in a place where we've been allowed, like, this is the last thing, I feel like you will. This is the last thing I'm gonna say. I didn't say last 3 times though. This is the last thing I'm gonna say. When I was growing up at Kaiser, I remember we didn't even say white people, which is this, right? We couldn't say white people because we thought it was wrong. So what's funny was my kids, I remember being in the store one day and they said, that lady something. I said, who, the white lady? And Asra looks at me, she goes, shh. So I'm like, what? She said, you said the white lady. I'm like, the lady's white. But that's because of years of having DEI training. But at the end of the day, we are entitled to be able to have the freedom to speak our truth, to tell the truth, to identify stuff as what it is. And the more we do it, it's an educational piece. So that's my, if y'all don't know, like y'all brought up all the stuff I'm passionate about. So
I feel like I have to respect my big sister here and go give Casey, and I'll go after Casey. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, you're so sweet. I appreciate that. I just wanted to go connected to, I think, Goldie, you were saying that you have already put into Azriel the thing of like sharing food and sharing community. And I was thinking about protecting all of our rituals and patterns, even when you go to college, and finding, again, it's about finding those connections, but a number of colleges, and I think, I know it happened for me when I was a freshman, but we did a Black World Tour or a Black like City Tour. And I'm just thinking about the really practical ways that you can preserve some of the things that you care about, that help you feel like you can still be your full self. And some of that comes from the way in which you sort of even adorn yourself, right? So like, what clothes do you decide to put on? Do you have on the earrings do you know where to go get them? Do you know where to get your hair braided? Do you know where to get your hair cut? All of these places are important for kids to know. Make sure that when the Black students gather, are you gathering in a way that you would gather with your cousins? Making sure that the stuff feels like home as much as possible. Do you all have the times to share food and do the practices where you are sharing the like the class schedules and okay, I took that class, here are the notes that I have, but just really trying to build all of these communities, and those routines and rituals and patterns will make you feel like you have a home away from home. So you have to establish some of them and start talking about things that are typical for you, because just because it's typical for you, it may also be typical for someone else who didn't know that they could say that. And so it's really in those dorm moments moments, just taking the opportunity to start sharing things about who you are, and other people say, oh yeah, me too. Oh, I've done that too. Oh, well, let's go this weekend to the store and do that. And, you know, whatever it is, if it is buying different products that you need and making and sharing the conditioners that you have, just all of those little things will be so very helpful. Like I remember I helped someone learn to wrap their hair because they had never like wrapped their hair on their own freshman year. And so I was like, oh, girl, I got you. You got a scarf already? You know, like all of these things are like super important, and just trying to make these little communities in your new space.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue, Casey, to what I was going to say. I think also that and like bringing people along with you afterwards. Like for me, I like to be able to say, oh, I'm going to bring in such and such to train my staff, another Black woman, another Black person that I'm going to bring and introduce into a new space as well. And I think that that's really important to like let other people know, like, first of all, Black people are so diverse and we have like, we're all not the same type of people. And so for me, it's like me and my coworker, Sade, we work in tandem. She is a Nigerian woman, you know what I mean? And we bring two different life experiences. So when we have the opportunity to stand in front of someone, I'm bringing Sade and I'm bringing Denzel, right? Like, because Denzel is this Black guy from Oakland who went to McClymonds that went to UC Berkeley. You know, like it brings in these different types of experiences. And I think that helps to continue to enrich other people's lives. And to continue our own like journeys and bringing other people behind us. And so I also think that it's important for us to introduce our friends and people into new spaces as well, to show other people. But then I'll be like, it's not my responsibility to always teach people, these other people. You know, like I don't always want to be the teacher, but I am going to show you what we about, you know, but I think that that's equally as important as well.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So I think now we've got some time to do some Q&A with the audience. I know see one other question in there, but I wanted to invite the audience to type in any questions that you have into the chat and I will share those. The one question we have right now is, are there any programs that offer mentoring for African-American young men on their college journey? And I'll just open that up to anyone that.
I would say there's a program that is operating out of UC Berkeley TRIO programs called the AMP program. It's the African American Male Pipeline Project that me and my coworkers but the Black men really facilitated. That is an amazing program. And we do a lot of the free advising, the college tours, and a lot of the male development is done by the coworkers, my male counterparts, but the AMP program is one of those opportunities for Black males, specifically for West Contra Costa students. So I would say that's one of them.
And then for Contra Costa College, they have the African American Male Leadership Program. And so they have been great because they've also opened it up to females as well. But those are two, what Kiana mentioned, and then this one. And we've been strengthening the partnership with Contra Costa College. They've been in our district for a while, but we actually did something this school year where my office and Contra Costa College went to all of our comprehensive high schools and visited during lunchtime. And so we want to do more of that and then expand it to the middle and the elementary schools. So those are some programs. And then as my office is reaching out to colleges, they are talking about how they are expanding their resources and support for Black students.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for participating. Thank you to everyone for joining. It's been a really great conversation, and just having the opportunity to hear all these different perspectives has been amazing.